The stars bent and twisted as the Vrelian Third Conquest Fleet tore through the fabric of space. 47 massive warships emerged from hyperspace at the edge of a small yellow star system. Their hull plating gleamed under the distant sunlight. Each vessel larger than a mountain and armed with enough firepower to reduce continents to ash dot. Fleet Commander the Strel stood on the bridge of the flagship, Eternal Dominion, his 4 eyes scanning the tactical displays with satisfaction. This was the 115th star system the Vrelian Empire had come to conquer, the 115th species that would kneel before their might, or be erased from existence. The system was called Sol by its inhabitants, an unremarkable yellow dwarf star with 8 planets and various smaller bodies, orbiting in predictable patterns. The third planet from the sun was the target, a blue and green world teeming with life and primitive civilization. "Status report," Thexrel commanded, his voice echoing across the silent bridge. "All ships have successfully completed the jump." "Commander," his tactical officer responded. "We are positioned at the outer edge of the system. The primitive inhabitants call their world Earth. Initial scans confirm previous intelligence reports. The species is barely spacefaring. We detect crude satellites in low orbit and primitive rocket technology. No defensive fleet. No planetary shields. No weapon platforms." Thexrel allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The Vrelians had conquered species far more advanced than these humans. Races with antimatter weapons and quantum shields had fallen before the Empire's might. This would be the easiest conquest in their long history of expansion. Begin standard approach vector. Slow speed. Let them see us coming. Let them feel the weight of their insignificance. Deep in the belly of the Eternal Dominion, in a cold detention block, Captain G1 sat against the metal wall of her cell. Her uniform was torn and dirty, marked with weeks of captivity. Beside her sat Tehan, a young man with sharp eyes, despite the exhaustion on his face. In the cell across from them, Heron leaned against the bars, her engineer's hands methodically working at a loose panel she had. Discovered days ago, they had been captured 3 months. Earlier, when their deep space exploration, Veso had encountered a Vrelian scout ship near the edge of human-explored space. The Vrelians had destroyed their ship and taken the crew prisoner. Most had died during interrogation. Only these 3 remained. "They're here," Giwan said quietly, feeling the subtle vibration through the hull that meant the fleet had dropped out of hyperspace. "There at Earth." Tehayan closed his eyes. "My family's in Sol. My sister just had a baby. I was supposed to meet my nephew when we got back. We still will," Jiwon said firmly, though her voice carried no false hope. She spoke with certainty. "Have faith." Heron looked at her captain with confusion. "Faith, G1. We've seen what they can do. Earth has nothing that can stop them. We barely made it past Mars with our technology. These things cross galaxies." Guan smiled slightly, a strange expression given their circumstances. "That's what they think too." Before Heron could respond, 2 Vrelian guards approached the cells. They were massive creatures, nearly 3 meters tall, with armored skin and multiple limbs. One of them spoke through a translation device. "The human female captain. You will come for questioning." G1 stood slowly, meeting the guard's eyes without fear. They led her through the corridors of the massive ship toward the interrogation chambers. She had made this walk many times before. Each time, they asked the same questions about Earth's defenses, military capabilities, and population centers. And each time, she told them the truth. They never believed her. The interrogation chamber was a stark room with a single chair under harsh lights. Thexrel himself stood waiting. An unusual honor that meant the fleet was close enough to Earth that her information now mattered more than before. "Human," he began without preamble, "your world is ours from conquest. I offer you one final chance to spare your people unnecessary suffering. Tell me the locations of your military installations, your defensive satellites, your weapons caches." Giwan sat in the chair and looked directly at the alien commander. She spoke in a calm, clear voice. "Earth has 3,000 orbital platforms. Each one carries weapons you've never encountered. We have fortresses hidden in the asteroid belt. We have bases on Mars, on Luna, on Europa, on Titan. Our ships use technology we developed specifically to fight enemies like you. And you will not conquer Earth. You will not even reach Earth. Every single ship in your fleet will be destroyed before you get close enough to see our cities. Dexrel stared at her for a long moment, then began to laugh. It was a harsh, grating sound that filled the chamber. Satellites. Hidden fortresses. Your species has barely managed to establish a single permanent station on your moon. We have been watching your world for 2 years. We know everything about you. You have no fleet, no weapons, no defense. You are animals playing with fire and thinking yourselves advanced. Guan said nothing more. She simply held his gaze until he dismissed her back to her cell. As the guards led her away, Dexrel returned to his bridge. His tactical display showed the fleet's steady progress into the system. They had already crossed the orbit of the outermost planets. In 12 hours, they would reach the orbit of Mars. In 24 hours, they would be in position around Earth to begin bombardment. Open a channel on all human frequencies, he ordered. Broadcast our standard terms of surrender. The message went out across the electromagnetic spectrum, powerful enough to reach every radio and television and computer on Earth. It proclaimed the arrival of the Vrelian Empire and demanded immediate, unconditional surrender. Then the fleet waited for the response and waited. The hours passed in silence. Earth sent no reply, no desperate pleas for mercy, no defiant declarations of resistance, no communication of any kind, just silence. Dexrel frowned at his displays. In his experience conquering over 100 worlds, this had never happened. Species always responded, either with fear or with futile defiance. They always acknowledged the presence of their conquerors. Confirm our transmission reached the planet, confirmed Commander. Our message was received. Multiple satellites captured and rebroadcast our signal. The entire planet heard us. Then why do they not respond? No one on the bridge had an answer far below them. As the Vrelian fleet crossed into the inner solar system, Earth remained silent. Not because it was afraid, not because it had given up. Earth was silent because it was ready, and it was waiting. Admiral Dongwu stood in the command center, buried 3 kilometers beneath the surface of Luna. The room was dark, except for the glow of hundreds of tactical displays, showing every ship in the Vrelian fleet. Each alien vessel had been tracked, analyzed, targeted from the moment they entered the solar system. Around him, his command staff worked in focused silence. Commander Sang-ho monitored weapon systems. Lieutenant Yuzhin coordinated fleet positions. Captain Hyansik reviewed tactical scenarios. They had trained for this moment for 15 years. Status, Dongwu said quietly. Yuzhin responded without looking away from her displays. Enemy fleet has passed Jupiter's orbit. Current speed indicates they'll reach Mars in 8 hours. They're broadcasting surrender demands on all frequencies. Earth is maintaining communication silence as planned. Good. Let them wonder why we don't answer. Confusion is a weapon. Sang-ho looked up from his station. Sir, the asteroids are in position. All platforms report green status. Orbital batteries are fully charged. We're ready to execute on your command. Dongwu nodded slowly. Humanity had spent decades preparing for this day. When the first evidence of alien intelligence had been discovered 40 years ago, the world's governments had quietly united around a single, terrifying question. What if first contact was hostile? The answer had been simple. Prepare for war. While humanity publicly continued its slow, careful expansion into the solar system, secretly every resource had been poured into military development. Asteroids had been hollowed out and filled with weapons. The orbital satellites the Vrelians had detected were decoys. Harmless civilian equipment meant to make Earth look primitive and unprepared. The real defenses were invisible. Thousands of small, stealthy platforms drifting through the asteroid belt, weapons hidden on every moon and planet. Ships disguised as mining vessels and cargo haulers. Humanity had turned the entire solar system into a trap, and now the Vrelians were walking into it. They still think we're helpless, Hyansik said. studying the alien fleet's formation. Look at how they're positioned. Loose formation, minimal defensive posture. They're not even running full scans. Arrogance, Dongwu replied. They've conquered so many species that they assume we're the same. They don't know that humans are very good at learning from history. Every war we've ever fought taught us lessons. We applied those lessons here. Yujin highlighted a cluster of alien ships on the main display. Sir, they're sending scout ships ahead. 5 vessels breaking formation and accelerating toward Mars. Let them go. Don't activate anything yet. We need the entire fleet deeper in the system before we spring the trap. On the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, Dexral grew increasingly disturbed by Earth's silence. His tactical officer had run multiple scans of the planet and detected normal civilian activity. Vehicles moving on roads, aircraft in flight, power grids operating normally. The humans knew the fleet was coming, yet they weren't evacuating cities or mobilizing military forces. It made no sense. Commander, his sensor operator called out, "We're detecting unusual readings from the asteroid belt." His attention snapped to the report. Explain. Multiple asteroids have changed position in the past 6 hours. Small adjustments, but statistically unusual. Also, there are gaps in our sensor data. Small dead zones where our scans are being absorbed or deflected. Could be natural magnetic anomalies, the tactical officer suggested. This system has high metallic content in the asteroid belt. Vextral studied the data for a long moment, then dismissed it. Irrelevant. Even if the humans have hidden some primitive weapons in the asteroids, our shields can withstand anything they might possess. Continue the advance. Back in the detention block, Giwan sat with Taehain and Heirin, speaking in low voices that the guards couldn't hear. How long until they reached the belt? Heirin asked at G-1, had been counting hours in her head. Tracking the fleet's progress based on the subtle vibrations and course corrections she felt through the hull. 3 hours. Maybe 4. They still don't believe you, Taehain said. Every time they question you, you tell them the truth, and they laugh. People see what they expect to see, G1 replied. The Vrelians have conquered so many primitive species that they can't imagine we might be different. To them, we're just another easy target. That's their weakness. I hope you're right, Heirin said quietly. Because if you're wrong, everyone we've ever known is about to die. G1 reached through the bars and squeezed her friend's hand. I'm not wrong. Earth has been preparing since before we were born. The Solar Defense Network isn't just weapons, it's a strategy. Everything about our public face was designed to make invaders underestimate us. Limited space presence, primitive rockets, divided nations. It was all theater. Theater, Taehain repeated. We made ourselves look weak deliberately. Exactly. Because in war, if your enemy underestimates you, they make mistakes. And the Vrelians are about to make a very big mistake. The hours crawled by. The Vrelian fleet continued its steady advance toward Earth, confident and unconcerned. Scout ships reported that Mars appeared abandoned except for a few small research stations. The moons of Jupiter showed similar minimal presence. Everything confirmed what the Vrelians already believed about humanity. They were alone. They were weak. They were doomed. On Luna, Dongwu watched the alien fleet cross the orbit of Mars and enter the asteroid belt. This was the moment. The point of no return. If the Vrelians detected the trap now and immediately jumped back to hyperspace, some might escape. But in another hour, they would be surrounded. And the window for retreat would close. All platforms report ready status, Sangho said, his voice tight with anticipation. The fleet positions confirmed, Yujin added. Stealth vessels are in attack formation. The enemy hasn't detected them. Ground forces standing by, Hyansik reported. If any landing craft were deployed, we're ready to eliminate them. And Dongwu took a slow breath. Thousands of people across the solar system were waiting for his order. Millions of lives depended on the next few hours. He thought about his daughter and soul, about all the children on Earth, who deserved to grow up free from alien conquest. He thought about every species the Vrelians had destroyed. Every world they had burned, every civilization they had erased. Not this time, not Earth. All stations, he said clearly. His voice transmitted to every platform, every ship, every weapons battery in the solar system. This is Admiral Dongwu. You know what we're fighting for? You know what happens if we fail? But we won't fail, because we are not prey. We are not victims. And today, we teach these invaders what humans do to those who threaten our home. He paused, letting his words sink in across 1 million communication channels. Solar Defense Network, you are weapons free. Execute Operation Hammer. Across the solar system, thousands of platforms that had been dark and silent for decades suddenly came to life. In the asteroid belt, hundreds of rocks that the Vrelians had dismissed as natural obstacles revealed themselves as fortresses. On moons and planets, hidden launch bays opened, and in the cold darkness of space, humanity prepared to show the galaxy. Exactly what happened when you hunted something more dangerous than yourself. The trap was sprung. The hunt was about to begin, and the Vrelians were about to learn that sometimes the prey fights back. The first indication that something was wrong came from the Vrelian sensor array. Asteroids that had been drifting predictably through space suddenly lit up with engine signatures. Not just a few. Hundreds of them scattered throughout the belt, all activating simultaneously. "Commander," the sensor operator shouted, "we have multiple active contacts. The asteroids are moving." Before the Xeral could respond, the main view screen filled with light. Tungsten rods, each one weighing several tons and accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed, streaked toward the Vrelian fleet. They were simple weapons, just metal cylinders with no explosives or guidance systems. But at the speeds they were traveling, they hit with the force of nuclear weapons. The first rod struck the destroyer Endless Victory amidships. The Vrelian shields, designed to dissipate energy weapons, did nothing against solid kinetic projectiles. The rod punched through the hull like paper, and the ship's antimatter reactor went critical. The resulting explosion vaporized the destroyer and damaged to nearby cruisers. Evasive action. The Xeral roared. All ships raised shields to maximum. Return fire. But the Vrelian weapons had nothing to target. The human platforms were small, armored, and spread across millions of kilometers of space. Vrelian plasma cannons fired into the asteroid belt, destroying rocks that held nothing but rock. Meanwhile, more kinetic rounds hammered into the fleet. The cruiser Manifest Destiny took 3 hits in rapid succession. Its shields failed and its hull broke apart, spilling atmosphere and crew into the void. The battleship Supreme Authority tried to move out of the kill zone, but a spread of missiles locked onto its heat signature. These weren't the primitive rockets the Vrelians had expected. These were quantum-guided, AI-controlled weapons that adapted to countermeasures in real time. 8 missiles reached the Supreme Authority. 3 were destroyed by point defense. 5 detonated against the hull, breaching the armor and causing catastrophic damage to the engineering section. The battleship went dark and began to drift. "Status report," Xeral demanded, gripping the command console as his flagship shuddered from impacts. 12 ships destroyed. 7 more heavily damaged. "We're surrounded, sir. There are weapons platforms throughout the entire belt. Our scans show hundreds of active signatures." "That's impossible. They were supposed to be primitive." Another impact rocked the Eternal Dominion. The shields held, but barely. Warning alarms blared across the bridge. On Luna, Songho watched his displays with grim satisfaction. First wave complete. Enemy fleet is in disarray. Casualty reports showed 12 confirmed kills, 9 vessels with critical damage. Phase 2, Dongwu ordered. Release the orbital platforms. High above Earth, thousands of satellites that had appeared to be nothing more than communication and weather. Monitoring equipment suddenly reconfigured themselves. Solar panels folded away to reveal weapons arrays. What the Vrelians had dismissed as primitive technology was anything but. The orbital platforms opened fire. Railguns launched projectiles at incredible velocities. Laser arrays, powered by compact fusion reactors, carved through space. Missile batteries released swarms of intelligent warheads, all of it focused on the Vrelian fleet as it tried desperately to escape the asteroid belt. "They're trying to retreat," Yujin reported. Several ships are attempting to reach minimum safe distance for hyperspace jump. I'll let them, Dongwu said coldly. No one leaves. No one survives to warn their empire. Hide-and-seek activated the final element of the trap. Hidden throughout the solar system, stealthy human vessels had been waiting. They were small compared to the Velian warships, but they were fast, maneuverable, and heavily armed. Now they've revealed themselves, cutting off escape routes and herding the alien fleet deeper into the kill zone. On the Eternal Dominion, Nexroll realized the terrible truth. The humans hadn't been silent because they were afraid. They had been silent because they were predators, waiting for prey to walk into their trap. Every assumption the Vrelians had made was wrong. Humanity wasn't primitive. They were deadly.
All ships.
He transmitted across the fleet. Emergency hyperspace jump. Scatter and retreat. But Tahan's virus, uploaded weeks ago during routine maintenance access, he had gained through patient observation of his guards, which chose that moment to activate. Navigation systems across the Vrelian fleet suddenly reported critical errors. Jump coordinates became scrambled. Safety protocols prevented the ships from entering. Hyperspace without proper navigation data, the Vrelians were trapped in the detention block. G1 felt the ship shudder from repeated impacts. The lights flickered and the gravity fluctuated. She looked at Taehyun and Heron and smiled. "It's working," she said simply. An explosion somewhere in the ship sent a shockwave through the hull. The detention block's door controls sparked and failed, and the energy barriers on the cells vanished. The three humans were suddenly free. "Move," G1 ordered. They ran through the corridors as the ship fell apart around them. Vrelian crew members rushed past them, too focused on damage control to notice three escaped prisoners. Emergency lighting cast everything in red, and the air filled with smoke. "Escape pods," Heron shouted, pointing to a corridor marked with Vrelian symbols she had learned to recognize during their captivity. They reached the escape pod bay. Just as another massive impact struck the ship, the corridor behind them collapsed in flames. Giwan punched the controls on the nearest pod, and the door hissed open. "Get in." Taehyun and Heirin jumped inside. Giwan followed, sealing the door behind her. She hit the launch button without hesitation. The pod explosive away from the dying flagship, small thrusters firing to push them away from the battle. Through the pod's small viewport, they watched the Eternal Dominion break apart. The massive warship, pride of the Vrelian fleet, split down the middle as its power core exploded. Debris scattered in all directions, glowing red-hot in the darkness.
"Ouch. Look," Taehyun said.
Pointing to the larger battle visible in the distance, the Vrelian fleet was being systematically destroyed. Human weapons platforms fired from every direction. Small attack ships darted between the massive alien vessels like wolves bringing down prey. Explosions bloomed in the void, brief flowers of light that marked the death of ships and crews. "We're winning," Heron whispered, barely able to believe it. "They always were," G1 said. "They just didn't know it." Back on Luna, Sang-Ho coordinated the assault with practiced precision. His displays showed each Vrelian ship and its status. Green meant destroyed. Yellow meant damaged. Red meant still operational and dangerous. "The battleship Iron Faith is trying to make a run for Jupiter," Yujin reported. "Vector strike craft to intercept," Sang-Ho ordered. "Don't let it reach cover." Three human fighters broke formation and accelerated after the fleeing battleship. They were tiny compared to their target, but they carried weapons specifically designed to kill capital ships. Plasma torpedoes struck the Iron Faith's engines, and the massive vessel began to list. More fighters swarmed in, targeting weapons systems and life support. The battleship tried to return fire, but human ships were too fast, too maneuverable. They had been designed for exactly this kind of combat. Within minutes, the Iron Faith was dead in space. Its hull breached, its crew dying. Hyensik said suddenly, his voice tense. "One of the Vrelian cruisers is accelerating toward Earth. Direct course. I think they're planning to ram." Dongwu's face hardened. Sang-Ho, the weapons commander, understood immediately. "I'm on it, sir." He left the command center at a run, heading for the hangar where his personal interceptor waited. If a Varelian ship was planning a suicide run at Earth, someone needed to stop it. The orbital platforms might not be enough. Sung-ho reached his ship in minutes, his crew already running pre-flight checks. He climbed into the cockpit, sealed his helmet, and ignited the engines. "This is Commander Sang-ho to all stations. I'm pursuing the cruiser. If I don't stop it, target it with everything we have. Don't let it reach Earth." His interceptor launched from Luna's surface, accelerating hard. Through his cockpit window, he could see the Varelian cruiser, trailing fire and debris, plummeting toward the blue planet below. Sang-ho armed his weapons and increased speed. He would stop that ship, whatever it took. Sang-ho's interceptor cut through space like a knife. Every system pushed to maximum performance. The Varelian cruiser ahead of him was mortally wounded, trailing atmosphere and burning fuel. But it was still accelerating toward Earth with desperate determination. "Target lock achieved," his computer announced in a calm voice that contrasted sharply with the situation. "Fire everything," Sang-ho ordered. Missiles streaked from his ship, followed by a continuous stream of railgun fire. The projectiles hammered into the cruiser's rear section, tearing through already damaged armor. The Varelian ship shuddered but maintained course. "Direct hit on engine assembly," the computer reported. "Target is not stopping." Sang-ho checked his trajectory calculations. The cruiser would reach Earth's atmosphere in 4 minutes, even if it broke apart during re-entry. The debris would devastate whatever region it hit. Seoul, Tokyo, Beijing, millions of people, directly in the path. He looked at the tactical display one more time, then made his decision. "Luna Command, this is Sang-ho. The cruiser's momentum is too great. Weapons aren't stopping it fast enough. I'm going to ram it. Negative." Donghu's voice came through immediately. "Sang-ho, pull back. We'll hit it with orbital platforms. No time, sir. By the time they retarget, the cruiser will be in the atmosphere. This is the only way." There was a brief silence on the channel. Then Dongwu spoke, his voice heavy. "Understood. Earth will remember you, Commander." Sang-ho smiled slightly. He thought about his younger brother, who was probably in their apartment in Busan right now, completely unaware of the battle happening above his head. He thought about the thousands of pilots and soldiers who had trained alongside him, all of them ready to make this same sacrifice if needed. "Tell my family I was protecting them," he said. "Tell them Earth stands." He cut the communication and diverted all power to engines. The interceptor accelerated beyond its design limits, metal groaning under the stress. The distance to the cruiser closed rapidly. 1,000 meters. 500. 200. Sang-ho closed his eyes. The interceptor struck the cruiser's reactor core at full speed. The combined explosions created a brief sun in Earth's orbit, visible from the surface as a brilliant flash. The cruiser disintegrated completely, its fragments too small to survive re-entry. On Luna, the command center fell silent. Dongwu stood motionless, staring at the tactical display where Sang-ho's signature had vanished. Around him, his staff bowed their heads in respect. "Mark his sacrifice," Dongwu said quietly, "and continue the operation. We don't honor the dead by stopping. We honor them by finishing what they started." Yujin wiped her eyes and returned to her console. Remaining Varelian ships are scattered throughout the system. 23 vessels still operational, all attempting to flee. None have reached hyperspace minimum distance yet. "Then we hunt them down," Dongwu said. "Every last one." Human strike craft spread throughout the solar system in coordinated search patterns. The small, fast ships were perfectly suited for pursuit. They had been designed during decades of preparation, incorporating lessons from every naval engagement in human history and adapting them for space warfare. Near Jupiter's orbit, a Varelian destroyer tried to hide in the shadow of Ganymede. Human sensors found it within minutes, and 3 fighters moved in for the kill. The destroyer managed to destroy one human ship with its point defense, but the other 2 launched plasma torpedoes that gutted its power systems. The destroyer drifted dead in space, its crew slowly freezing as life support failed. Hyansik led a ground assault team to Mars, where intelligence indicated a small Varelian landing force had deployed during the initial approach. His team of 40 soldiers moved through the red dust with practiced efficiency, their armor's camouflage adapting to match the terrain. They found the Varelian camp near Olympus Mons, a temporary base with 4 landing craft and approximately 200 alien soldiers. The Varelians had set up defensive positions, but they were designed for frontal assaults. Hyansik's team attacked from multiple directions simultaneously. Using tactics the aliens had never encountered, human railgun fire tore through Varelian armor. Electromagnetic pulse grenades disabled their weapons and communications. Within 20 minutes, the battle was over. The Varelian commander, wounded and defeated, stared up at Hyansik with something like disbelief. "How?" the alien managed to ask through its translator. "How are you this advanced? Our intelligence said you were primitive." Hyansik removed his helmet, letting the alien see his face. "You saw what we wanted you to see. We learned long ago that the best defense is to look weak while preparing for war. You came here thinking we were prey. But humans don't stay prey for long. We adapt. We learn. We become the hunters." He raised his rifle. "And we protect our home." The Varelian camp was destroyed completely, leaving no survivors far from the main battle. G1's escape pod drifted through space, its emergency beacon broadcasting on human frequencies. A patrol ship picked up the signal within an hour. "Escape pod, this is HSS Defender. Identify yourself." "This is Captain G1, service number 7-7-3-9. I'm here with Navigator Tehine and Engineer Heron. We escaped from the Varelian flagship. Stand by for recovery, Captain, and welcome home." The patrol ship brought them aboard, and a medical team checked them over quickly. They were malnourished and exhausted, but alive. The ship's captain, a veteran officer named Biorum, met them in the medical bay. "You've been listed as missing in action for 3 months," Biorum said. "A lot has happened since your ship was destroyed," G1 replied. "We knew Earth was preparing. That's why we survived the interrogations. We knew help was coming." Biorum smiled. "Not just help, Captain. Victory. The Varelian fleet is being destroyed as we speak. In a few hours, this will be over." Heron started crying with relief. Tehien sat down heavily, the weight of 3 months of captivity suddenly overwhelming him. Gi-1 remained standing, her back straight, her eyes clear. "I want to return to duty," she said. "Captain, you need rest, and I need to fight," G1 interrupted. "Those aliens held us prisoner. They tortured us for information. They came here to destroy our world. I want to be part of finishing this." Biorum studied her for a moment, then nodded. "We're heading to intercept a Varelian frigate near Saturn. If you're up for it, we could use your intelligence about their ships." "I'm up for it." The patrol ship, along with a dozen others, cornered the Varelian frigate in Saturn's rings. The alien vessel tried to use the ice particles for cover, but human sensors tracked it easily. Gi-1 stood on the bridge, pointing out weak points in the ship's design based on what she had observed during her captivity. "The shield generators are here and here," she said, marking spots on the tactical display. "Hit both simultaneously, and their defensive coverage will collapse." The Defender's weapons officer followed her guidance. 2 precise strikes disabled the frigate's shields, and follow-up shots crippled its engines. The Varelian ship stopped trying to flee and began broadcasting a surrender signal. "They're asking for quarter," the communications officer reported. Biorum looked at Dongwu's standing orders. Displayed on her command console, no survivors. No witnesses. No one to warn the Varelian Empire about Earth's true capabilities? "Negative," Biorum said flatly. "Continue fire until the target is destroyed." The frigate died quickly, its hull breached in multiple locations, its crew exposed to vacuum. Ji-Wan watched without emotion. She thought about her crew members who had died during interrogation. She thought about every world the Varelians had conquered, every species they had enslaved or exterminated. She felt no pity. Throughout the solar system, the hunt continued. One by one, the surviving Varelian ships were found and eliminated. They tried to hide in asteroid fields, behind planets, even in the corona of the sun itself. Nothing worked. Humanity knew every rock and particle in their home system, and they used that knowledge ruthlessly. By the end of the third day, only 2 Varelian ships remained. Both were heavily damaged and running on emergency power. They transmitted desperate pleas for mercy, offering technology and information in exchange for their lives. The pleas were ignored. The last Varelian ship, a small corvette that had somehow survived this long, made a final, desperate attempt to reach hyperspace jump distance. It accelerated past Neptune, its engines glowing white-hot from the strain. 3 human fighters pursued it into the outer system. The corvette was faster, but it was also damaged. One engine failed, then another. The human fighters closed the distance and opened fire. The corvette's shields flickered and died. Railgun rounds punched through the hull. The ship tumbled out of control, bleeding atmosphere and fuel, and then it was over. The third Varelian conquest fleet was gone. All 47 ships. All 200,000 soldiers and crew. Not a single survivor remained. 72 hours after the Varelian fleet entered the Sol system, Admiral Dongwu stood before the United Earth Assembly. Representatives from every nation gathered in the chamber, their faces showing exhaustion, grief, and triumph in equal measure. "The battle is over," Dongwu announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the room and broadcast to billions watching around the world. "The Varelian Third Conquest Fleet has been completely destroyed. No enemy ships escaped. No warnings were transmitted to their empire. As far as the Varelians know, their fleet simply vanished." The chamber erupted in applause and cheers. People embraced each other, weeping with relief. Earth had faced an existential threat and survived. More than survived, they had won decisively, but Dongwu raised his hand for silence. "Our victory came at a cost. 4,317 human lives were lost in the battle. Each one a hero who stood between Earth and conquest. Among them was Commander Sang-ho, who gave his life to prevent a Varelian cruiser from crashing into our planet. We honor their sacrifice, and we swear that their deaths will not be in vain." The chamber fell quiet, respect for the fallen settling over the celebration like a heavy blanket. "We have also recovered 3 prisoners of war," Dongwu continued. Captain Ji-won, Navigator Tae-hoon, and Engineer Hae-rin survived 3 months of captivity and provided crucial intelligence that aided our victory. They will be awarded the Solar Defense Medal, our highest honor. Ji-won stood in the observation gallery, flanked by her 2 crew members. She wore a fresh uniform, her body still recovering from the ordeal of captivity. When Dongwu mentioned her name, she stood and saluted. The entire assembly rose to applaud her. In the days that followed, Earth began to process what had happened. Families mourned their dead. Engineers analyzed captured Varelian technology. Scientists studied alien biology from recovered remains. Military strategists debated what would come next. Eugen worked around the clock in the intelligence division, piecing together information from captured Varelian computers. What she discovered was both fascinating and terrifying. The Varelian Empire spans 14 star systems, she reported to the command staff during a strategy meeting. They've conquered 114 species over the past 3,000 years. Their military doctrine is based on overwhelming force against weaker opponents. They've never encountered serious resistance before. Hide-and-seek studied the star charts that showed Varelian territory. How long until they realized their fleet is missing? Unknown, Eugen admitted. Conquest fleets typically operate independently for months or even years. But eventually, they'll notice. When they do, they'll send investigators. Or worse, another fleet. The question hung in the air like a blade. What would Earth do when the Varelians came back? The assembly debated for weeks. Some representatives argued for strengthening Earth's defenses and hoping that Varelians would simply avoid the Sol system in the future. Better to hide and survive than to provoke a larger conflict. But others disagreed strongly. These voices, led by Ji-won herself, argued that hiding was no longer an option. "They found us once," Ji-won said during her testimony before the assembly. "They will find us again." And next time, they'll come with more ships and better preparation. We can't just wait and hope they leave us alone. That's the thinking of Prey. She stood before the assembly with Tehan and Heron beside her. All three wore their medals, but their faces showed no pride, only determination. I spent 3 months on that ship, G1 continued. I saw what they do to conquered species, slavery, exploitation, extermination. We found records of worlds, completely sterilized, billions of lives erased because those species dared to resist. The Vrelians don't negotiate. They don't coexist. They conquer or they destroy. She pointed to the star charts displayed on the chamber's screens. We have their technology now. We have their hyperdrives, their weapons, their maps. We know where they are, and they don't know what happened here. That gives us an advantage we'll never have again. You're suggesting we take the offensive, one representative said carefully. You want us to attack them? I'm suggesting we do what humans have always done when faced with a threat, G1 replied. We strike first. We strike hard, and we make sure they can never threaten Earth again. The debate raged for weeks. But slowly, opinions shifted. The evidence was clear. The Vrelian Empire was built on conquest and violence. They would come back eventually. And when they did, they would be prepared. Unless Earth struck first, the assembly voted. The measure passed by a narrow margin. Earth would go to war. Dongwu was promoted to Fleet Admiral and given command. Of the newly formed Seoul Expeditionary Force, thousands of engineers worked around the clock to reverse engineer Vrelian hyperdrives and adapt them to human ships. The process was dangerous and difficult, but humanity had always excelled at taking enemy technology and making it their own. 6 months after the battle, the first human warship equipped with a hyperdrive conducted a successful test, jumped to Alpha Centauri and back. The crew reported no issues. The technology worked. Production began immediately. Not just on Earth, but on Luna, Mars, and in orbital shipyards throughout the system. Humanity poured every resource into building a fleet. Not a defensive fleet meant to protect Earth, an offensive fleet designed for one. Purpose: to carry war to the Vrelian Empire. The ships were not beautiful. They were built for function, not form. Heavy armor, massive weapons arrays, advanced sensors and stealth systems. Everything humanity had learned from the battle, combined with captured Vrelian technology and improved with human innovation. G1 was promoted to commander and given control of the first carrier group. Taehyun became chief navigation officer for the entire expeditionary force. Heirin led the engineering teams that would keep the fleet operational during deep space combat. Yujin was promoted to intelligence director, responsible for gathering information about Vrelian targets. Hyansik commanded the marine forces that would conduct ground operations on enemy worlds. 1 year after the battle, the fleet was ready. 30 capital ships, 200 smaller vessels, 50,000 soldiers and crew. It wasn't as large as the Vrelian conquest fleet had been, but it was enough to begin. The fleet gathered in formation beyond Mars, their hulls dark against the stars. Aboard the flagship Indomitable, Admiral Dongwu addressed his forces one final time before departure. 1 year ago, the Vrelian Empire came to our system expecting an easy conquest. They thought we were primitive and weak. They thought we would surrender or die without a fight. They were wrong. Today we take the lessons we learned and carry them forward. The Vrelians wanted to make us prey. Instead, they created something they've never faced before. They created an enemy that understands patience, strategy, and determination. They created an enemy that will not stop until our world is safe. Dongwu looked at the star charts showing the route to the nearest Vrelian system. We're not going there to conquer. We're not going there to enslave. We're going there to send a message. Earth is not prey. Earth is protected. And anyone who threatens our home will face the consequences. He paused, letting his words sink in. The Vrelians sent 47 ships to destroy us. Not one returned. Now we send our response. And we won't stop until they understand that humanity is not to be trifled with. On the bridge of the carrier Soul's Pride, Ji-won stood at her command station, looking at the faces of her crew. Some were veterans of the Sol System battle. Others were new recruits who had signed up after the victory, eager to serve. All of them were ready. "It's navigation," she said calmly. "Do we have coordinates?" Tae-hyun checked his displays. "Confirmed, Commander." Hyperspace route plotted to the Varian outpost system. Travel time estimated at 6 days. Engineering status? Hayren's voice came through the communication system. "All systems green. Hyperdrive is ready for jump on your command." Ji-won took a deep breath. She thought about the 3 months she had spent as a prisoner. She thought about Sang-ho's sacrifice. She thought about every human who had died defending Earth. And she thought about the future. About children who would grow up free from the threat of alien invasion. About humanity spreading through the stars, no longer hiding, no longer afraid. "All ships," she transmitted on the fleet-wide channel. "Prepare for hyperspace jump. We depart in 60 seconds. Round her, the crew moved with practiced efficiency. Consoles lit up. Systems engaged. The carrier's massive hyperdrive began to power up, generating the exotic energy needed to punch through space-time. 30 seconds, Tae-hyun counted down. Jae-won gripped her command chair. Through the viewport, she could see Earth in the distance. A beautiful blue sphere hanging in the darkness. Home. The world they were leaving behind to protect. 10 seconds. 9. 8. The other ships in the fleet began to glow as their drives activated. 30 points of light in the darkness, preparing to leap across the galaxy. 3, 2, 1. Jump. The stars stretched into lines, and the human fleet vanished from the Sol System, heading toward enemy territory at speeds that defied physics. Behind them, Earth continued its rotation, peaceful and quiet. Cities glowed in the night. People went about their lives, most unaware of the fleet that had just departed.